Hello and welcome to Perspectives. This is the very first episode with Samantha from Watch Concierge Wervices, which is a business dedicated to all things watch related, be it buying, selling, or servicing, and everything in between. In this episode, Sam and I discuss why you might like to buy and wear a watch, whether the watch industry is starting to cater for women more now, what to look out for when selecting a watch, how you can get involved in the watch community if you're an enthusiast, and much more. So without further ado, this is Perspectives. Sam.
Hello.
Thanks very much for joining me on the podcast. Really appreciate your time with this. Can we start with learning a bit about you and your background?
Sure. So I've been working in the watch industry for 16 years, I think it works out as. No, I don't look old enough. I started at Breitling in Tunbridge Wells, where I'm based in Kent, the UK service centre for Breitling's here. So I think there's about 40 watchmakers and majorities of watches, broken watches in the UK go back to that service centre. So I was working there, sort of customer service, managing the parts department of operations. Went on to Bremont in Henley, did a sort of similar sort of role there, where Bremont was still quite young. So it's nice seeing them grow. I then went on to work with a friend who had an Amiga certified service centre, which I sort of helped run. And they also sold some pre-owned watches. So it was kind of an introduction to sort of the pre-owned side of things as well. And then I came up with the idea for my business, Watch Concierge Wervices, 3 years ago. So lockdown cliche, lockdown 1, banana bread, lockdown 2, start a business. And then sort of got the ball rolling part-time with the job I was in at the time, and then went full-time with it in August last year.
So your concierge business, what exactly do you do within that then?
I like to say anything to do with watches that you can think of, I should be able to help.
Sounds like you don't have much experience in the watch industry. Only 17, 18 years. Just a little bit.
Yeah, something like that. I guess the time I spent in the industry has allowed me to get like a really big network. You know, I've worked closely with watchmakers, and people move around, move jobs, so lots of different brands, lots of different people, lots of different expertise. And then so where I'm at the moment, yeah, you can come to me with any query. If I can't help, then I can put you in touch with somebody that can. So bulk of it is sort of selling pre-owned watches at the moment. I can also get hold of like brand new watches. I can also help with servicing, vintage restoration, custom made straps, safes, accessories, insurance, shipping, anything you can think of.
Amazing. Does sound quite diverse. I find that watches divide opinion a lot of the time. So some people really love watches. Some people find them pointless. Why would you want to spend money on something when you have the time on your phone? You've got things like the wearables that have really made a resurgence in the last few years. So Apple Watch, your Fitbits, everything like that. And to be honest, I'm quite guilty of just picking up my phone and looking at the time rather than looking at my wrist. That might be because I struggle to tell the time a lot of the time, but I probably shouldn't admit that on a podcast. But I mean, you can spend in excess of, you can spend everything from like £10 through to £100,000 plus if you have the means to do so and the desire. And I've heard of watches being referred to as wearable art by some in the past. Is that something you might agree with?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are lots of different reasons why people wear, I guess I'd say more sort of luxury watches. It's difficult to put a price point on it because you can get some really well-made watches. I'd probably say from a price point, £500, maybe, something like that. But me personally, it comes down to sentiment quite a bit. There's something about, I guess, initially sort of buying into a brand, why are you buying it? Do their values align with yours? Obviously, you're going to like the look of it. And then once you start wearing it, it's something that's on your wrist, it's so close to you, you're spending so much time on it, it's going on adventures with you. Again, if you are lucky enough to have multiple watches, it's that option of being like, right, what mood am I in today? Or what activity am I doing today? Or what outfit am I wearing today? And having the fun element of being able to match your watch to that. Yeah. And I guess it's like a reflection of personality as well, isn't it? you can choose fun watches if you kind of in a fun actor kind of person. If you're more sort of classic or conserved, there are beautiful dress watches out there, and especially for men, I think as well, it's another expression that where women might choose jewellery. It's it's a nice accessory for men as well.
Yeah, 100%. You touched on sentiment there, and I think that's kind of a big one for me as well. That's my father gifted me quite a few watches, maybe 2 or 3, and I wouldn't ever sell them. They are some of the really beautiful sort of old 50s, 60s dress watches, and others are 70s kind of retro cool sort of TV dial style watches, and they draw a lot of attention for the right reasons as well. I think some can draw attention for the wrong reasons, but I really like the idea of having a watch as a sort of an heirloom and as a sentimental piece. So if you saw a watch you liked, what would motivate you to buy a particular watch? Is there anything you particularly look out for? You mentioned history of the brand, you mentioned things like their values, if you like.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, another watch that I've got prettily prepared to hand. I've got an Oris Aquis, and I should probably sort of add in here, I always say I'm not like a watch collector. I always say I'm an enthusiast. I don't sort of buy a lot. I'm quite sort of, I don't buy and sell a lot. When I buy it, it's kind of buy it to keep. And the Oris, I've been to a few events, love the events they did. I love what they stand for. They do a lot around sustainability. And I was going on a holiday to New Zealand, and I wanted like an active dive watch. And it took a while for me to kind of put everything together and like which watch would I, is going to kind of do the job. And also it's a value for money. And I very nearly bought a Tudor Black Bay 58, which I still think is a fantastic watch for the money. The Oris Aquis ticked a lot of the same boxes, but it was like a little bit cheaper. And I like the look of it as well. It's just got a really nice kind of smoky green, grey dial. And then, from a sentiment point of view, it went to New Zealand with me, and it went on all these adventures, and loved it. Lots to consider.
I got given a Casio G-Shock by my other half, and I must admit, I think it was about £90 as a watch, but I absolutely love it. I wore it for sort of maybe 3 months straight at one time. I obviously took it off. I'm not that dirty, but I did wear it for a long time just because I never really felt it on my wrist, and I thought it was such a useful watch to have. So you can have things that are expensive in your collection. With the Aquis, that's just under £2,000, I think they retail for, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can have ones that are sort of £90, and you get just as much enjoyment out of both, depending on what you're doing with it. With my Christopher Ward, I was an engineer at the time, and I was working on some different setups for tests, and the amount of times I hit my watch and it was just so painful. It made me cringe every time, and now the bezel's all scratched up. But you don't want something that's immaculate all the time, because to me, those sort of, as cheesy and cliche as it sounds, those sort of scratches and dings, they've all got a bit of a story to them, and the Casio is great in that respect because you can't break it at all. Like, no matter how many times you scrape it against the wall, it's fine. Like, it's bomb proof.
Yeah.
And that's what they're known for. So if you're a bit clumsy like me, then you probably would want to go for something like a Casio G-Shock.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of watches that, if you do want to sort of treat yourself to a nice little luxury watch, there are a lot of watches that tick all the boxes, but there is something nice about maybe having three watches. Actually, I probably rotate between 3. One that's kind of your waterproof adventure watch, one that's a little bit dressier, or again, if you want something vintage that's got the heritage and the kind of history behind it. Yeah, and then like saying, depending on your mood or activity, you can kind of rotate.
Yeah. So I've always seen sort of watches and cars go together quite hand in hand. Perhaps that's something to do with like the history of motorsport sort of heritage with the brands like Hoya or Tag Heuer, as I know now, with their sort of Formula One watches. They've got the Carrera and the Monaco. With that said, do you think that historically watch brands tended to be more male orientated in what they produce and market?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, recently I went to a Amiga Hair Time exhibition, and sort of the idea of a wristwatch really became about for women. Men had their pocket watches, and the wristwatches were for the women. But I think over time, I don't know where it would have kind of changed. Maybe a lot of military war watches, maybe that's kind of where it parted a bit. But I think, especially where we are now, or say maybe 10 years ago, I think it's again started to change a bit now. But, the mechanics of a mechanical watch, 250 moving components, no battery, it's just on wheels and cogs. There's a lot of similarities between the mechanical watch and the mechanics of a car as well. So I think there is a natural interest from a male perspective, and obviously from a marketing campaign and real sort of passion for that kind of thing. Watches and cars go really hand in hand.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a caveman in that if I poke something, I expect it to move. So anything mechanical, I like. I like watching how it moves and turns. Whereas I think, yeah, apart from quartz, I still have no idea how they work.
No. I don't get up to Grand Seiko. That's like a whole other black magic.
You mentioned that you went to a Her Time sort of Omega thing. So have you seen that brands are starting to begin to cater for women a bit more now?
Yeah, I think they're kind of waking up to it a bit. I mean, part of the community I'm in, there are lots of women watch enthusiasts, and it is growing. I think there's a phrase again it's kind of phasing out, but pink it and shrink it. They watch brand would take a watch and just make it smaller with the pink diamonds on it and put a quartz movement because women can't understand how mechanical movement would work. So they just they take them out. Actually, the Patek Philippe Nautilus, that's quite a good example. You don't get many small automatic Nautilus watches. They'll just put a quartz movement inside. When we know that we can make small mechanical movements. But it's starting to change. I think again, kind of educationally, women are interested in mechanics as well. And if they do have £3,000 to spend on a watch, they from an education point of view, yes, it's £3,000 because you've got all this work, craftsmanship, not just because it's got £3,000 worth of diamonds on the dial. So it's getting there. I think it's getting there.
Yeah, there's that the diamond stuff that you still see a lot of American rappers with lots of bling on their wrist.
Yes.
Questionable taste a lot of the time, but each their own, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you say about they make it small and make it pink because I actually got my partner a pink watch for Christmas. I got her a Seiko Presage, really, really nice watch.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a bit of a funny story behind this because I didn't want to let on that I was getting her a watch and I wanted to make sure that it would fit her. And we're quite similar in sort of proportions in terms of wrist size and things like that. She's a similar height to me as well, so I was like, okay, I'll size the watch based on my wrist. And it wasn't until Christmas Day when I gave it to her that I realized it was too small for her, and I do in fact have smaller wrists than my other half. So actually it's now opened my eyes a bit more to, and it was at a recent sort of meet. We can maybe talk about the community aspect in a minute, but there was a recent sort of watch meet where I tried on the Cartier Santos, but the 24mm version, so it's actually a lady's watch, but absolutely fell in love with it because it fit me so well. Because I have such small wrists, I find a lot of men's watches look a bit silly on me because the dive watch I've got at the moment is probably as big as I'd go, and I think that's maybe like 41mm, but anything bigger than that, it just looks silly, really. So ladies' watches are a godsend in the sense that the smaller sizes look a lot better on my wrists, and it shouldn't just be a lot of watches are unisex now anyway, as long as it's not completely blinged out with diamonds and looks a bit garish, which I think a lot of ladies' watches do.
Yeah.
Because I think they just either miss the mark slightly, or as you say, they just make it smaller and make it pink, which doesn't always work with a lot of the watches.
Yeah. Is
there like a rule regarding sizing your watches appropriately?
Ultimately, no. It's I'm definitely towards using unisex watches more. Sometimes you want to go on a watch website and you want to scroll watches, and it's just like men's or ladies, and you're like, okay, well, there's one I want. So definitely sort of filtering and sorting by size as opposed to gender. And I think it just opens up. Have you ever gone to a sunglasses shop and you've not quite worked out whether you're looking at the male or female sunglasses?
Yeah.
That kind of awkwardness. And even working in a retail watch shop, again, I've had somebody, a gent, pick up a watch, the Satina, a mid-sized Satina. He's like, oh, I really like that. And then there was a label next to it that said ladies' watches. And he was like, oh, actually, no, I don't. And then I was like,
yeah, that's
okay,
weird.
if you like it. Yeah. And, although I'm just sort of joking about, putting diamonds on it, again, if you like it, if you're a male, if you're female, you like it, ultimately buy what you want. I think trends are starting to go, crossing over. Women are wearing bigger watches, and I think men are starting to wear slightly smaller watches. There's a chap I follow on Instagram, Mr. A, and he wears a lot of vintage, small stone dials like Piaget's. And again, maybe vintage is difficult really because vintage men's watches were quite a bit smaller as well. So it's just kind of, opening it up. Ultimately, wear what you like and try everything on as well.
It's a bit like fragrance, I suppose, because there was a lot of fragrances which are, they're labelled as men's or women's, but there's quite a crossover between the two. I know there's some quite famous individuals who used to wear like women's perfumes. I think Sean Connery used to wear something like Jicky by Garlier, and that's a female fragrance on the
I've
bottle,
never heard that,
so to speak. But it depends what works for you. I suppose fragrance is quite unique in the sense that sometimes it smells horrible out the bottle, but then you put it on your skin and it smells really good. And it can be completely around the other way as well. So you can try some fragrance on and it smells nice out of the bottle, but it just doesn't quite work on you. And I think that's probably quite a good parallel to make with watches, really, in that if it looks good on your wrist, then it doesn't matter what it's labelled as. You should just, if you like it, try it. If it works for you, then go for it.
Yeah. I think we'll touch on the community side of it a bit. I don't think anyone's going to say to you like, oh, I like your watch, but like, oh, it's a shame it's, a girl's watch and you're a boy. I don't think everyone's a lot more accepting of like, no, it's really cool. It's great on you.
So you mentioned about sort of community, and you said you've been to some events with different sort of women in the industry with the hair time thing. What are you talking about in terms of community? What sort of could people get involved in if they wanted to learn a bit more about that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, again, so going back a little bit, I think sort of the pandemic and Instagram just created this huge boom around watches. Sort of pre-pandemic, I used to follow sort of some journalists on Instagram and a few other watch accounts. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, they might be a watch enthusiast that their day-to-day friends don't really get it. And you'll find that people have their personal Instagram accounts and then they'll have a watch account. So there's a real online community that kind of sprung up from that. And then me personally, how long ago would it have been? 5-6 years ago, maybe, I think. I joined Red Bar, which is a global watch community. Started in New York, and then there's chapters all over the world. Actually, when I was in New Zealand, I just sort of messaged Red Bar Auckland and was like, hey, can I hang out with you? And I just went and hung out, and that was great. So you can sort of sign up to really any local chapter. Events team tend to alternate between brand events where a brand will put on an event and you go along, play with the watches, and they'll do a little talk. Or we have just general meetups where it would be sort of a secure room in a pub, and members can just bring along as many watches as they feel comfortable doing so. And again, you could have a £50 Seiko that you found in a boot fair, or you could have a £100,000 MB&F, and members get equally excited. There's no kind of flashiness, and that's really nice.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of these, and that's actually how I met you, isn't it, Sam? So I went to a couple of these Red Bar meets, and I was actually very surprised at what you just alluded to there, in that I was a bit skeptical to go because I didn't really have a majorly flash watch, and I thought, if I don't have anything that's sort of more than £1,000, I probably shouldn't bother going. But it was really, really nice, just a genuine group of people who were enthusiastic about watches, and it was a chance to just nerd out over things, discover some brands that you'd never heard of before, see some pieces that you perhaps may never get to hold or see in your life, A, because they're so rare, B, because they probably cost a lot of money, and there were a couple that were there some more expensive ones in there, but there was equally some very interesting micro brands coming through, and it's really opened my eyes to different brands that are out there, and being able to try different things on and see actually if there's a watch you're interested in, will it work on my wrist? And it's just such a nice environment to be able to do that. So yes, I'd highly, highly recommend anyone who's into their watches or even just curious about it, see if you can get signed up for a chapter local to you, and I'm sure you won't regret it.
Yeah, I think Red Bar London, they've paused membership at the moment because it's just got so big. But we've got ICO run Red Bar South East, which covers Kent, Surrey, Sussex, Essex. There's an Oxford, Cambridge, Bristol, North East, I think, Glasgow, Edinburgh. I think that's it. Yeah. Look it up and go along.
So the UK is pretty well covered. Yeah, and even if you're not, I'm sure you can look it up on. Do they have a website where you could look up and sort of find a chapter local to you?
It's not quite linked yet, I don't think. It's a case of putting it's mainly quite Instagram based. So it's a case of putting Red Bar into Instagram and sort of working out where your local one.
See what comes up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if I was looking to get into watches or perhaps buy my first watch, are there any brands in particular that you'd recommend looking into? Maybe from a sort of starting at a low price point and working our way up?
Yeah, I say difficult one. It's quite personal, and let's say the reasons behind buying a brand are, so many and price points. There's an element where I would say for sort of longevity, I personally prefer like a mechanical watch or an automatic watch over a quartz watch. And I'm saying that it depends on again your lifestyle and things, but quartz watches would probably maybe last sort of 30, 40 years, 20, 30 years. A bit like a mobile phone, you'd expect to, swap that out. Whereas, we're still repairing and wearing mechanical watches that are sort of 100 years old. So that's kind of the main consideration. Again, maybe sort of looking at brands that are easy to repair going forward. So anything with like a Swiss movement, an ETA movement, it's, again, longevity is quite, it's pretty solid, well-made movement. So like, you can get some sort of Seiko watches or watches with Seiko movements that for the price point, run well. Their accuracy tends to be not quite as good as the Swiss movements. Yeah, I mean, so Hamilton's a big favourite. I think you can get a khaki field for £300-400. I think they can go up to 700 for an automatic. Hamilton's a big favourite. Pre-owned watches, you could probably pick up a pre-owned Amiga for a good price. That's a really solid watch. Yeah, I'm trying to think of so many micro brands as well. It's a rabbit hole.
So many, yeah. So I mean, that Baltic really caught my eye. So there's a Baltic watch. They're a French brand. They do one called the MR01, and it has just got the most beautifully finished dial. It's sort of a bead blasted finish, and it's got a small sub dial. And I think I think you pick them up for like £400-500 again, something like that.
Yeah, I think Well, there's been a bit of a when they get released, everyone kind of jumps on it and they sell out quite quickly. But
yeah,
if you can get one,
get yourself on the pre-order list.
Definitely. Actually, Studio Underdog there, and I think they might have just put their prices up. But I think again, if you can get hold of one, they're a really cool brand, British brand, really nice guy called Richard. And I think they start about £500-600 for a mechanical watch as well. Really cool.
Yeah, I really like them. They've done some quite quirky designs and colorways, haven't they? They did like was it a watermelon watch they did?
Yeah.
And then
watermelon
they did
a strawberries and cream, mint choc tip. I think the watermelon's probably still my favourite. I got a chance to wear one.
The watermelon's cool.
While.
And an aubergine one that was purple with like a light cream almost. Do you see the aubergine one?
Yeah,
just playful again. That's nice. I think playfulness is quite a good thing if you're. I think Swatch do some quite nice watches as well in terms of if you're looking for something quite cheap and you're looking for something a bit quirky. They've just released like an art lineup. So do you know the artist who did the Great Wave painting?
Oh yes.
I can't remember what the guy's. Yeah,
artist.
I can't remember what the name is, but they've done the Great Wave. Put that on a watch. They've done some pop art style watches. They've done René Magritte, so the chap with the bowler hat, then Apple. I don't know too much about art, to be honest. I'm not going to pretend I know much about art, but
they do. I think there's they do a lot of collaborations. I think there's a hashtag Swatch loves art, and then it'll bring.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the very, very popular Omega collaboration with Swatch as well when they did the Moon Swatch. They're now going. Just note for anyone listening here: do not pay more than was it £300? I think it was. Do not pay any more than that for him because he's being ripped off. Okay.
Yeah. It's
like the sneaker hype, wasn't it? It's terrible. Like £1,500.
You should be able to get hold of them now. So someone went the day before they came out. A client of mine offered to pay me £400 on top of the cost of the watch to go and stand in the queue, and I was tempted. And then I saw the hype, and I was like, "No, not doing it. Sorry, mate."
Well, the queue was like over a mile long, wasn't it? Something like
that.
I saw a video of the queue, and I was like, "Nah." I like them, but I wouldn't stand in a queue for that long.
Yeah, I think from a marketing point of view, I mean, the watch itself is amazing. It's, again, anyone listening that's not familiar with it, the Omega Moon watch is really iconic, and then Swatch made a plastic version of it. And so that's, I think, marketing was tick, tick, tick. But also, I don't want to blame one journalist, but there was one journalist in particular that I think probably paid by Swatch to be photographed camping outside 2 days before. And then as soon as that photo was leaked, that's when everybody started turning up. And then 2 days on the release, he posted a video like, "Oh, I'm here to buy my Marines watch. Here's your bag. Thank you very much." It was obviously a bit staged.
Didn't look too dishevelled then after being
Yeah,
camped outside for 2 days.
Exactly.
No, not buying it.
Yeah. No, really. So I'm kind of blaming him for the hype.
So the Moonwatch is that's it's a pretty iconic watch, really, wasn't it? So it's a watch you can pay £3,000-4,000 for, but you can get it in a plastic version which looks very, very similar. Obviously, the movement's very different, and it's plastic, and it's bioceramic, the material that they're made out of. But it's got all the stickers and everything to basically replicate the look of the originals, and it's an endorsed product as well. So that's probably why there was a lot of hype behind it, because you can get it for a fraction of the price considering what you pay for the main thing. On the point of buying watches, then I know that obviously Rolex has had a massive growth since lockdown, really, and that's inevitably brought the rise of a lot of fake watches as well. I think we're long gone are the days where you're buying a Breitling off a guy in a beach in Tenerife, but the fakes are getting a lot more sophisticated now. And I spoke to someone who paid £600 for a fake Rolex, and I'm like, that's not a small amount of money for a fake watch. So what could people do if they're looking to buy a watch that's maybe a bit more expensive, maybe something like an Omega Rolex or something of a similar sort of price range? How can they protect themselves against the fakes of the world and make sure they're buying the real deal?
Yeah, first off, if buying from an authorized retailer, so any of the brand's websites, you can go on there and it'll list the authorized retailers, and so that's when you'll know you're getting it directly, effectively from the brand, or a retailer, then you're gonna be fine. There are obviously grey market retailers out there, or pre-owned watches. Again, if you are buying from somewhere that's sort of a grey market or pre-owned, just kind of do your research. Are there Google reviews? Are they trustworthy? Is there anyone else that that's used them? Once you actually purchase the watch, they should, is there again any refund policy? If you take it somewhere and it's not what it turns out to be, can you take it back to them? Some people will actually, again, if you say to them, "I do want to go and get it checked out," independently, they'll allow that. And again, there are sort of independent or authorized watchmakers out there. So you could go to a grey market retailer, pick up your Rolex. You could then take it along. Even Rolex have got workshops all over the country, but there's one in central London as well, and you can get it authenticated by the brand themselves, or again as independent watchmakers that are really experienced. They know what they're looking at. Majority of them, just from looking at it, you can tell, but Rolex in particular, the counterfeits are getting so good that really you want an experienced watchmaker to take the case back off, and only when the case backs off and they're looking at the movement can they really be sure that it's a genuine watch.
Yeah, it is wild to see some of the fakes that are coming out now. I've seen some videos on YouTube, literally with the real thing, comparing it to the fake, and down to the minutiae. It's the detail on some of these fakes is incredible. It's quite scary, really. It just shows you what they could do, and as soon as there's a new release, there's going to be an abundance of people replicating them with fakes and things like that.
Yeah,
purely because of the price tag they yield, really.
Yeah.
So, going back to that boom in the market, so the Rolex boom especially, what do you think? I think as a whole, watches seem to have grown sort of exponentially in sort of popularity. I think YouTubers have made that watches are a lot more accessible now. So Adrian Barker, he's doing some great work. Jenny L, I think, is another one I watch quite regularly. And then there's the Irish chap, Nico Leonard.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's all very different approaches to talking about watches. Obviously the latter's a lot more about sort of entertainment, but he's clearly a very, very knowledgeable guy when it comes to watches. Is there anything else that you think has caused that boom? Do you think they've contributed to it, or you mentioned lockdown earlier might have an impact on it?
Yeah, I think lockdown had an impact in purchasing watches. People couldn't travel, and I think again, they're on Instagram, they're online. I think Watches and Wonders was an online. Watches and Wonders is a sort of a trade show, I guess, and there was an online show in March 2020. So again, that was a lot of interest where people sat around watching that. So that helped. I think in terms of the Rolex boom, I've got my own theory on that. I haven't done too much research. I don't know how true it is.
Say it.
But prices were, and they still are, over retail. So You can't go into a store and buy Submariner, and because there's a wait for it, if you do get a Submariner, you can then walk out the store and sell it on for a big profit. And people were cottoning onto this, and we like to call it flipping watches. And then I think my sort of theory is that there was a number of reports in publications, like the Financial Times, that aren't watch publications, they're financial publications, that says, kind of, hey, watch collecting is the new investment. Your returns are going to be far bigger than anything else. If you can get your hands on a £9,000 Daytona, you can sell it for 25,000-30,000. And that kind of, turnover, people were then buying a Daytona at, 11, 12, 13,000 and selling it. And so then it was just fueling this grey pre-owned Rolex bubble, where people who previously weren't that into watches were literally just buying them from an investment point of view and not wearing them. And then I think, the bubble kind of burst a little bit. Prices definitely dropped. I think they're kind of settling now, but they're not. It just got sky high. Yeah. That's my theory.
Yeah, they did get quite ridiculous. Interesting you say that, because I've got two people I know. I work with both of them, and one of them, they both got Daytonas. One of them has bought the Daytona as, I think, more of an investment piece, so he's got it in a safe at home, and he only comes out on very special occasions. Whereas the other bought it a number of years ago. I think he got it for £6,000 to £7,000, so very cheap for a Daytona at the time. And he wears it every day. That's his everyday watch. And I remember talking to him about it, and he said a lot of people are saying, do you know what you've got on your wrist, how much it's worth? That's sort of £20,000-30,000 worth of watch you've got on your wrist. Like, why don't you sell it? And his response always sticks with me, because I love it, and it kind of epitomizes, there's two ways you can go about it. It epitomizes to me the real reason, like, why you'd want to wear a watch. And he just said, if I sold it, then I wouldn't have a watch. And I was like, that's a fair point. He's you could be making £20,000 on it, but you wouldn't have a watch. And yes, you can replace it, but to him, that's his watch, and he wants to wear it, which I think is really nice. And you see it a lot with cars as well. People buy expensive cars, and you see people that really drive them hard, and you have other people who keep them in sort of carcoons, they're called. So they're basically, you can park your car in them, and they're inflate, and they're temperature controlled and humidity controlled. Yeah, I think, the main company that do it is called like Carcoon. So yeah, a cocoon effectively for your car. So I don't blame the person who keeps it in the safe, because especially with the amount of thefts going on and stuff in central London with brands like that, it's not not one against the other. I just think it's interesting how you have two different approaches to either collecting or just owning a watch for certain value.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's the joy of watches, where people invest in whiskey and then never drink it. That kind of blows my mind a little bit. Like, you're buying it, it's purely investment. You're never going to get to enjoy it. Yeah. Whereas, and it's like an iPhone. You're using it every day, but you're replacing it, you're throwing it out, and there's no real sentimental value there. Whereas watches kind of sit nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think for a lot of people, I think, spending £1,000 on a watch is a lot of money, but they'll go out and spend £1,000 on a brand new iPhone, and it's kind of all relative, I suppose, which they're then going to throw away in a couple of years. So it's all priorities and relativity. The same with anything, I think. Once you get into something that interests you and you're passionate about, or as a hobby, then you find out. I have a theory that it's not until you get into a hobby that you realise how much money and how deep the rabbit hole goes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy what you can do.
You do what I do. Work in the industry, and then you get to enjoy it.
And then you just get to wear them all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you've got it good.
Yeah.
I think I'll have to take a leaf out of your book in the future and just see where I can slot myself in the watch industry.
Yeah, there's jobs going. We'll find one.
Yeah. So on Watches and Wonders, you mentioned that show. So it's the trade show where all the big brands release their new displays and their new releases. I've seen that Rolex have released, they've done something very different this year, and something that they don't normally do, and that's they've gone a bit more playful. So I think Rolex is known traditionally as being quite serious and quite, they do what they do, and they do it very well. But this year they seem to have sort of shaken it up, and I think it's divided a lot of people. So the releases of the Oyster Perpetuals, so one's got the puzzle coloured dial, and the other one's got they look like little balls basically, but they are to signify all the dial colours in the Oyster Perpetual range as of 2012, I think.
Yeah, that might be 2020.
Could be wrong. But yeah, what do you think of the new?
I don't love them. It's not, I guess it's not, I don't know. It's nice to see them do something more playful, a bit different. Traditionally, they are always quite, boring. They just change like by a millimetre and that's about it. And actually, when the Oyster Petrol coloured dials came out, people absolutely loved them. So, yeah, why not kind of play on that? I also think with the Tiffany dial in particular, everyone went mad for. Well, that's not actual Tiffany, the blue, turquoise blue, everyone went mad for. So I think it's a way of re-releasing, because the both, I think the puzzle one as well, definitely the bubble one, the background colour is that Tiffany blue, I think, isn't it, with all the other colours on top. So I think that's a clever way of just being like, hey, we know you like this colour, look, we've got another one for you. Yeah. So yeah, maybe they will start to come a bit more playful. I think they always used to sort of lean on Tudor, little baby brother, just to kind of put out the slightly different, more playful stuff. But yeah, maybe they are starting to go. What did you think of them?
I did not like them, in all honesty. The dial, the balls one was not too bad. But again, it's one of those ones where it's like, here's a watch that you can't buy unless you've been on the waiting list for like 4 years already, or you have 4 or 5 other Rolexes.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
Again, they're nice to look at. Some of them, not the puzzle one. I'm not really too sure what they were trying to achieve with that, but it's just a matter of opinion really for me. But the Oyster Petrol I love, and this would be one I'd love to get, would be they do a purple coloured great dial, Oyster Petrol, and the rhodium dial. It just looks so cool. On the subject of cool dials, actually, I really like what you mentioned, the Oris earlier. The Aquis that they do, so Oris do a watch called the Aquis, but they do it with a recycled plastic dial.
Yeah.
So I think that's playful, but it's also very, very cool as well, because you get such a good watch. You get a unique dial, so the one you buy will be personal to you, because no other dial will look the same just because of the way they manufacture it, and you can get it for less than £2,000. Whereas the Rolex, you have to go on a wait list for so many years, buy so many Rolexes before you can even go on the wait list, and then you're lucky then even if you can get hold of one, and it doesn't look as good, in my opinion.
Yeah. The other thing, I mean, I haven't seen like enough photos of the Rolex, but they seem to be just like, they're just painted dials. Patek or JLC were doing these beautiful like enamel dials, detailed, real craftsmanship, and it is just kind of these painted blobs. And then, like I say, Oris, recycled. Even my dial is, the grey green is a little bit more interesting. So yes, lots of other.
I do like the grey one. The grey one looks nice, and the green.
Yeah.
I need a green watch in my life, I've decided. I'll say that's the next purchase.
Actually, they're quickly on dial textures, colours. I got hands on with a Moser recently, and got like again kind of greeny dial, vertical brush dial. But as you turn it, in one light it's black, and then as soon as you turn it, it's like bright green, and it's just so clever. So yes, really gorgeous.
Moser did something really interesting with the world's blackest material. I think it's called Vanta Black, and they made a watch out of that with black hands, but the hands on the watch look almost grey because the background dial is so dark that it just makes everything else look grey effectively. So that was really interesting. They do some very, very interesting pieces. They do one that replicates the Apple Watch as well. I think Moser did that one, didn't they?
Yeah, love that. Yeah, they made one of cheese.
They made one out of cheese. What?
Yes, they did. Yes, yeah. It was years ago. I think it was when I first heard of them. So I was a bit like, really? And then I heard it again recently. I was like, oh no, that was them. No.
They made it out. They made it out of cheese, or made one.
Yeah, made a watch out of cheese.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So go back to Apple Watch. That was very cool, because that's a fully mechanical watch with a fully blacked out dial, which is just a minute repeater, isn't it? So I think you can only tell the time with it by pressing it. Okay. So yeah, love that.
I'm sure there's a joke about cheese, or like spending too much cheddar on a cheese watch. No, I want to stop there.
Cheesy Swiss jokes, yeah.
Cheesy, yeah, that's it. All right, let's wrap this one up then. Thank you very much for your time, Sam. If people want to find out a little bit more about your concierge services, where can they go, and how can they find out a little bit more about what you do?
Yep. So the website is watchconciergeservices.com, and on Instagram at Watch Concierge Services. And then that is all very professional, showing the services I do, watches I've got for sale. But it also links through to my other Instagram account, which is Time on Her Hands, which is just me having fun with watches, really, which is the more personal side of watches as opposed to just the boring business stuff. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.